Welcome to Silicon Slopes Live. We're here with Dr. Erin Fox, who is the Senior Pharmacy Director at the University of Utah. Dr. Fox, thanks so much for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. I want to talk to you about the pharmaceutical drug supply, how COVID-19 is changing that. And so it seems to be highlighting this pandemic, how the global pharmaceutical drug supply is, and what are the key drug shortages we can expect from China closing down production?
That's a great question. When this began, everyone was really worried about what kinds of shortages we were going to expect with China closing production. But when you think about it, a lot of the pharmaceutical companies really keep their manufacturing process a closely tight trade secret. And so we don't always know the exact location of where a medication is made. And sometimes we don't even know the name of the company that is making the product. So it's really hard to get a list of tell me all the drugs made in China. It just doesn't exist. But what we do know is that depending on where manufacturers are in their manufacturing process, if they have a pretty good supply and they don't need to reorder from China right now, then we may be okay. But months from now, we may actually see shortages depending on those delays. So it's a little too early to tell.
What is the cause of drug shortages? What causes that?
That's a great question. Usually, the cause of a drug shortage is a manufacturing or a quality problem. There are lots of companies that have taken shortcuts over the years, haven't really upgraded their facilities. And so overall, that can create a quality problem where the manufacturer needs to shut down. And then, the capacity isn't very large. And so there usually isn't another company that can quickly make up the difference. And so because of those quality problems, we end up with drug shortages.
Help me understand. So, why is COVID-19 causing shortages if it's not about the global supply chain and it's not about quality?
That's a great question. And we're in a really unusual situation. Again, normally a shortage is caused by a quality issue, but in this case, we have a huge spike in demand, very, very large numbers of patients needing treatment, especially in the ICU. So you look at those pictures in Detroit and New York, where the hospitals are kind of almost overrun, really. That huge spike in demand, we just don't normally have that much in the supply chain. Normally in the supply chain, we have anywhere about 3 to 6 months. We don't have enough to sustain a year's worth of patients all at once.
So, I've read that the FDA has a task force to try to
Yeah,
cover this and to talk about shortages. What can they do to help?
that's another really good question. So a couple of years ago, drug shortages were so bad that Commissioner Gottlieb put together a task force. And that task force released a report last fall. And one of their recommendations is really interesting because it actually recommends a little more transparency around how our drugs are made and what the quality is. And so they actually recommend a quality rating scale, kind of like what you would see if you went to order something on Amazon or even a restaurant rating. We don't have that right now. We have a pass-fail system. And so I think that's one of the really interesting elements that they decided would help. It hasn't yet been implemented, though. It would take Congress to act there.
Interesting. So if the FDA can't really solve the drug shortage problem, are there any other solutions here?
There are. I mean, on the one hand, this is really the drug company's problem. They kind of need to fix it. If they're having poor quality, they kind of need to fix that and do their job. On the other hand, these are very inexpensive products in most cases. There's not a lot of profit margin, so you can see how things might get tight. One of the really interesting solutions is actually from Utah. Civica RX is they're headquartered there in Lehigh, and full disclosure, I'm a volunteer advisory board member, but this is a company that is owned by hospitals, and the intent is really to help solve this drug shortage problem. The way that they do this is with long-term contracts that will give the drug companies 4 or 5 years of a contract to use. And then they'll also be able to really assure those hospitals a supply. So we have to sign up to use this product for 5 years, but overall it's a really good thing, and it's very innovative. So we're still in the starting point, but so far, even with this COVID shortage, Civic has been really helpful.
Dr. Fox, how are pharmacists doing during COVID-19? How are they responding to all of this? It must be, I mean, this has changed everyone and their workflow, but how is it affecting pharmacists?
That's, you know, we certainly are affected, especially retail pharmacists who are on the front lines, really trying to help patients maintain their chronic medications. Um, we've shifted a lot towards mail order, for which can be more helpful for patients. But initially, when you think about advice to make sure you have a couple of months supply on hand, that was a struggle for some patients, and so pharmacists really did help make sure that patients were able to get those refills. But inside the hospital, a lot has also changed for our pharmacists, especially as we work to make sure that we have enough supply. We're working really closely with the doctors on different alternatives that we could use in different situations. And so it's definitely a different workflow, but it's really nice to see the teamwork there.
I love that. Well, Dr. Fox, thank you for everything you're doing. Thank you to everything the University of Utah Health is doing during this pandemic. It means a lot. I've said this. We've had a number of people from the University of Utah Health because the leadership from your organization is so critical to everything happening. But I really think the University of Utah has stepped up in such a dramatically great way here, and it's just been amazing to see. So thank you for coming on to
Thank you so much.
explain what's happening here, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, thank you. Go Utes.
Thank you. Yes, yes, go Utes.
Thanks.